Thanks all for coming along tonight to our regular event, the Surrounded by Sound. Very happy to see some new faces here, and we'll be ringing the old faces that didn't show up to ask why. This is a very special one tonight because we have a special guest speaker here. I know many of you already know Steve. Steve wrote the book on Kraftwerk, the 33 1/3 book on Computer World. So he's going to give us a little bit of an introduction on Kraftwerk and Autobahn in particular. We're then going to listen to the new 2024 mix that's been done for the 50th anniversary of the album, and hopefully, and Steve might even know the answer, this is the beginning of the whole catalogue being redone. I personally love this format. I listen to 5.1 and Atmos mixes as much as possible, and the collection we have at our disposal for this night is now over 250 titles. So each month we feature a new artist, and we've done Bowie, of course, twice. We've done the Beatles. What did we do last time? Talking Heads. And the next one will be our first Australian one, which is In Excess, because they're about to release an anniversary edition of Listen Like Thieves in surround, and they've already done Kick, so we're featuring them in the next one. And as a bonus, the only other Australian surround sound that I know of is David Bridie's Active Free Choice, his first solo album. I was involved in that album as David's manager, but it was also my idea to get a surround sound mix done. And it was the first Australian album done in surround sound at the time of recording. Well, it was the first Australian surround sound at that time. But even internationally, only old classic legacy albums have been done in surround. No one had released one contemporaneous with their new release. So when Sony released the Super Audio CD system, they used David's album worldwide as the test disc for their new system, or for their new, well, it was a new system, new audio system, and new format.
No pressure.
So that was pretty good, and considering it was signed to EMI, you know, Sony were very desperate, so they licensed the album worldwide just for the surround sound bit. So I'll probably play that as a bonus after the Excess albums to continue with the Australian theme. But that's off the subject. We will play, after hearing from Steve, we will play Autobahn. We'll then have a short break to get more drinks or whatever, and then hear a bit more from Steve. And then I've brought along the catalogue, 3D catalogue as it was called, which is the live box set of Kraftwerk performing all 8 of their studio albums. They've all been done in surround sound, so we can't play all 8 of those. Well, we could, if you're willing to stay.
See you Monday.
I mean, it is a public holiday tomorrow, so, and we could go straight from here to the dawn service. So it'll be,
And then back to Blitz.
and then back here for Blitz. Yeah. Ooh. So anyway, what we'll do is, I know Steve's going to introduce one of the songs from the catalogue after he talks. I'm then going to make a personal selection from one of the tracks, but we will take requests to play favourite songs from anywhere within the Kraftwerk catalogue. So anyway, I'm going to hand over to Steve. I've done enough talking. He's the guest. So please welcome Steve Francis, Dr. Steve Francis.
Thanks, Bruce. Hi everyone. I'm going to assume, apart from you, David, but we love you so much, that we're all fanboys and girls of Kraftwerk. No, a little. Sorry, Dave. That was not very nice, was it? Straight under the bus. Actually, let me restart. Welcome everyone. Good to see you all. particular thanks to Bruce and Eleni for inviting me to yabber on for a little while and hold you off listening to this amazing audio of Autobahn. Bruce and I had when we both ordered this Blu-ray version, and I think it arrived around the same time, didn't it, Bruce? Anyway, we rang each other up straight away. I had to get over there. Harry, you ended up being there too. We just needed to hear it, and I think you're going to be blown away if you haven't heard this new version of the album. And why am I here? I'm and as a fanboy, probably not as much. I haven't seen them as many times as Bruce. There's a friend of mine in Florida who he had a wedding dressed in the Man Machine outfit. All the guests were in the Man Machine outfit, his name is David Sanborn. He bought Florian's little Golf, the little VW that's in the film clips. So he wins the cool award by a country mile. They actually went over to, because they work. It works. Good. David and his partner Jennifer, they were in touch with Florian, and then when he passed, with his daughter, and managed to purchase this, and it's in pristine condition. So there's a little video, if you look on YouTube, of them driving it from Dusseldorf. So anyway, it's just a little bit of a thing there. So anyway, my first engagement with Kraftwerk was 1982. Yes, I'm old. 1982 in Frankston, where I grew up. I went into the library one day, and at the time you could borrow vinyl and cassettes. And I walked into the library, and they had this separate section. It was heaven. It was just pure heaven. I was probably in year 10 or year 9, something like that. Walked into Frankston Library, the cassette section, and I was like, ooh, what am I going to get today? And I was like, obviously I'd already started my David Bowie journey, a massive Bowie fan, but I looked there and I was like, hang on, what can I see? There's this little yellow cassette, just really like a beacon standing out to me, and I walked over, and it was Computer World by Kraftwerk. I'm like, yep, I need that. And then I looked around and I saw this other cover ended up being Japan's Gentlemen Take Polaroids. So that was like this lightning moment. Went home, listened to Computer World, and was like, oh my God, amazing. Now, from that point on, obviously went to Autobahn and other things. So that was the beginning of my Kraftwerk journey. But Autobahn, so let's think about where the band was at this stage. So really, Florian and Ralph, who are the two key people in Kraftwerk, in 1969, they were in a short-lived kind of very hippie, organic kind of like proto-krautrock band called Organisation, and they did an album for CBS or something crazy like that. And it was just like this free-flowing kind of can-like improv jam on two sides of a record, mostly relatively not great. That's about 69. Yeah. And then when that band went nowhere, they kind of split that band, and they were like, what are we going to do? And the thing with those guys, they were actually classical musicians originally, but they kind of also, some of the context, they were of that generation that were wanting to move on from their parents' generation, who post the Nazis, post World War II, it was like this generation that were trying to divorce themselves from the Nazi past. At the time in Germany, yes, of course, things had changed, that they'd lost the war, but there was still this undercurrent amongst that generation of sort of acceptance that it didn't go well, that there was this past that they wanted to bury. So what Kraftwerk and their generation is, they're all uni trained, they wanted to move beyond it. So they actually kind of weirdly were looking to the past. So Ralph and Florian were very obsessed with like Bauhaus, the design. So it wasn't just about music, it was about design, and they were interested in sort of harking back beyond World War II and World War I to the Weimar Republic. So they loved Metropolis, was their favourite film. And then also they wanted to be very modern. So they were very interested in Fluxus, Stockhausen, Pierre Schaeffer and the music concrete from France. So, and then they're also a bit obsessed with like Gilbert and George. So there's this club in Dusseldorf where they're all from called the Cream Cheese Club, and at the Cream Cheese it was a mix of artists and exhibitions and music, a bit like what Eleni and Bruce are trying to do here. At theirs they had Pink Floyd and bands like that were coming through Germany and through Dusseldorf, going to the Cream Cheese. They also had like Gilbert and George and Andy Warhol exhibitions and things like that. So Gilbert and George, if you think about the look of Kraftwerk later, they took a lot from Gilbert and George. That kind of uniform, that kind of very stoic, kind of like that look and feel, and that kind of sort of humour they took from Gilbert and George, particularly Florian. He pushed that. Not at the Autobahn time, but anyway. So then around 1970, that organisation broke up. They then found, and this is probably a key moment, at Strasse 16, they found this sort of warehouse not far from Dusseldorf railway station, and they didn't name it this little place. They didn't name it Kling Klang Studio at the time, but they'd found it and they started tinkering there, and it was Ralph and Florian mainly. Actually, ironic, at some point, a number of really important musicians in the krautrock scene came through Kraftwerk, including Michael Rother from Neu. He was momentarily in Kraftwerk. Klaus Dinger the drummer from Neu was momentarily in Kraftwerk. A number of musicians that went through the scene, but they were always pretty unique, Ralph and Florian. So anyway, 1970, then 1971, 72, 73, they started doing their first Kraftwerk albums, and again, experimental. I don't know if have any of you heard, the Kraftwerk 1, Kraftwerk 2, which have, by the way, very Andy Warhol-like traffic cones. On Kraftwerk 1, it's a green striped traffic cone. On number 2, it's an orange striped one. So very Andy Warhol, very conceptual right from the start. And then their third album at that time was Ralph and Florian. Now Florian has said, because he was asked when he was alive, "Are you ever going to release those albums?" He said, "No, that's prehistory." So they've never had a release since that time, those 3 albums. But they really kind of built the journey towards Autobahn, which we'll hear today. And the last vestige of that early journey is, to me, Florian's flute is kind of, I know this is crazy, but he treated it, he did lots of stuff with it, but it was a real feature of that early sound. Ralph was more that played organ and things like that and early synthesizers, but Florian's treated flute and his treated voice was a really key thing in that early stage. And we'll hear tonight there's still a little bit of his flute left, but with the next album, Radioactivity, the flute had gone. So that's quite sad. But actually, I think that was just that development that needed to happen. So, okay, next key moment is, so they finally called it Kling Klang Studio around 72. And then in 1973, in July, now here's the thing, Dusseldorf is a very industrial area, but it's also actually, the more I found out about it, it also was a very fashion was a big part of it too, and nightclubs. So that song Neon Lights is really about the guys clubbing, because they do work in the studio and then they go clubbing at night, which is sort of a bit against the image, but they were obsessed with discos and night clubbing. And all of the fashion models would always go to the Dusseldorf nightclubs, so that's where the model comes from as well. So it was an amazing place. So Dusseldorf, it was that mixture. Anyway, they met Wolfgang Fleur, who was the drummer in Kraftwerk, in a nightclub called the Matahari in July of 1973. And that was a pretty pivotal moment, because we're starting to get basically the Beatles were coming together, because the fourth member of Kraftwerk at that time was Karl Bartos. He joined once the album was a hit and they toured the US. So I'll talk about the personnel on the album in a minute. But so that was So they were coming together. The fifth Beatle, as I like to call him, Emil Schult, is not a name you're probably very familiar with. But when I was writing the Computer World book, I got to know him really well because people wouldn't realise he actually did the cover of Autobahn. He did the cover of Computer World, and he did the cover of Radioactivity. He was like their conceptual designer. He was living with Wolfgang and Carl in the same kind of share apartment. So it's where the five of them started to come together. The other thing about Emil, who I really love, and I've got a little video later, a 30-second one, where he's a bit crazy and amazing and creative, where he takes us through his studio. It was for the launch of my book a year or two ago. So I thought I'd play that for you tonight. But he did these paintings for me. They're called glass paintings. So it's kind of like him painting. I've got all these series of photos of him painting those. So it's a real privilege to have those paintings by Emil. But he wrote lots of the lyrics. He wrote the lyrics to Autobahn. He wrote the lyrics to Computer World, Pocket Calculator, a whole range of things. He's also their tour manager, and just general driver and person that helped around town. I want to tell one more. We'll get to the music in a minute. I want to tell another story about Emil though. So the personnel on the album. So it was Ralph. Actually, are there any people that are interested in instruments? I could tell you what instruments were used on it. If you are you interested? All right, here we go. So the rhythm was something called a Maestro Rhythm King drum machine. The bass line in Autobahn particularly was a Mini Moog. And this is really cool for Eno fans out there. They used an EMS Synthy AKS, AK5, that suitcase synth that Eno used with David on Low and Heroes. What else did they have? I think they had an ARP Odyssey. So yeah, love an ARP Odyssey. But they also had, so Emil originally, also I forgot to say, played guitar and violin with the band live, but they had they hadn't got their image quite right, so I'll show you the album in a minute. There was still kind of a bit of that hippie long hair vibe. And so Klaus Roeder was playing guitar and violin on the album. So when you hear those bits of, and it really sings, doesn't it, Bruce? Yeah. In the Atmos mix, you really hear the little bits of violin and a little bit of guitar that's like, oh, hey, I didn't notice that before. So that's pretty cool. There's a little bit of Florian flute, and then one final thing. Florian, who was obsessed with vocal manipulation, he got a kit which was called a RoboVox speech synthesizer, which he built. I think it must have been a kit, and so there's a little bit of that. The vocal chant in Autobahn is him using that synthesizer. But anyway, what I want to show you was, so this is my first German press, original German press of the album. And so this was done by Emil. And on the back, as you can see, there's Florian, Ralph, and Wolfgang with long hair. And then this guy, Roeder, who played the violin and the guitar. So, yep, all good. But guess what? When Emil originally did this cover, he was in Wolfie's spot, but he had to his photo he had to replace his own photo in on the back there with Wolfie because he was a last minute replacement. So because he's a bit naughty, so if you look, there's the rear vision mirror there, and that's the back cover. But if you ever get a copy of the original, here is a little and it's actually Emil surviving the he put himself just down here in a little mirror.
Why did he need to be erased?
Because he was really nice and he just did what was needed, and Wolfie was going to be touring with the band and he was sort of on TV, so they said, Emil, you got to erase yourself. So it was a bit sad, but he's always been like that. So when when the album's released in Britain, they took this off and they put this classic image here. So the UK release had that image, and even on this new DVD, it sort of says conceptualized by Ralph. He really is very in control of the band, particularly since Florian died. So it says conceptualized by Ralph, and then really minute, original concept by Emil. So anyway, quite funny. That's probably enough for now, I think. Any other things, Bruce? Did you want to add to?
No, I'm happy with all.
I've got a couple of quotes. Do you want
Got
to
a
give
couple of quotes, yes,
from the
absolutely.
band about the album? Why don't we do that and then we can kind of move into. I'll say that in a minute. So it's some quotes, and I'm going to end with a David Bowie quote, of course, because he's the best quotes. So here we go. A couple of quotes. Ralph said, "It's sound poetry." Another quote: "Sound sources are all around us, and we work with anything," which is a real music concrete kind of concept, isn't it? And they did actually go on the Autobahn with kind of, as they were building the album, they'd go with a little bit of the album and listen to it in the cassette in that car that my friend David owns, on the Autobahn, to see, does it really, is it doing what we want it to do, And supposedly the album's based on a trip that Florian took in that Beetle from Dusseldorf to Hamburg. So there's actually kind of this concept behind it. So they actually did a little bit of music concrete, like recording of sounds and things like that they try and reproduce. So it was kind of real. It was a real concept that they thought through. So a couple more quotes. What we are doing is to make sound pictures. It's of real environments. Tone films, he called it. Our music is a continuation of early futurism. So that's but a bit of that kind of Bauhaus, Weimar stuff. Part pop epic, part sound installation, another one. But my favourite one from David Bowie is folk music of the factories. That's where he kind of like getting that sort of Dusseldorf vibe. So that's enough from me. I'll just say that the mix that we're going to hear, it was actually done by Franz Hilpert, who, if you've ever seen them live in the last 15 years, Franz, if you're looking at the stage, he was the one on the far right, in that kind of those neon suits. He only just recently retired from the touring band, which is, so he was pretty pivotal figure after Carl and Wolfgang left and Florian died. So he's obviously not in the touring band anymore, but he's the one that curated this mix that we're going to hear this around.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.